October 15th of last year, I was pulling into Waynesboro, Virginia on my bicycle. It was raining, it was getting dark, and I wanted to get off the road. I had left my house about a month earlier on September 6th. I walked out my front door, jumped on my bike, and started pedaling for South America. I was following the migratory route of a species of hawk, the broad-winged hawk, which breeds in New England across the eastern US and migrates down the Appalachians. And so I was following them, and their route had taken me to Waynesboro. Now this trip was funded, I raised money for this trip, and I was trying to honor the people who had invested in this and spend the money wisely. And so I tried to camp where I could, stay in hostels where I could. I was following the Appalachian Trail for quite a bit. But occasionally I had to stay in a motel. So I pulled into Waynesboro. I pulled into this motel. I went up to the desk and I asked the fellow behind the desk what was the rate, and it was too much for me. So I went back out and got my phone and looked around for alternative accommodation. And I found a place across town. So I called up, the fellow answered, and I checked the rate, and he told me the rate. It was a good rate, so I said, I'll be there in a few minutes. And jumped back on my bike, cycled out through the rain, across town, across Waynesboro. I find the motel, and I walk into the office, and immediately I'm struck by the fellow behind the desk. He's got a bindi on his head. He's clearly of Indian ancestry or Indian heritage, Hindu. A lot of Indian knickknacks around the office. And I thought, this is great. I come from Ireland, so I grew up in a white, 100% white at the time, what seemed like 100% white and Catholic, and so I was still getting to terms. I still am getting to terms with the multiculturalism of this country. But anyway, the fellow told me that this was the best hotel in town. It was the last room available, and the hairs on my neck started to go up, because I knew it wasn't the last room available, because I just come from another hotel that was wide open, and they were just more expensive than you. And so the hairs on my neck started to go up. But he said, this is the best hotel available, best room, best everything. So with that, he takes me out. I asked for a non-smoking room. Not smoking tends to go with cycling 6,000 miles. And he takes me out to my room out back, and he's carrying a can of spray, and I thought, well, that's all right. So he opens the door, and I'm met with this wall of 10-day-old cigarette smoke, and I guess his sense of a non-smoking meant that no one was actually smoking at this point. So I go in the room, and I'm following him, and he's spraying ahead of him as he goes. The door jamb is cracked in two places, reattached with glue and screws. I'm not exaggerating when I think that it was probably bust in by either the cops or a drug dealer, or both. The sheets were full of holes. The room hadn't been hoovered, vacuumed in weeks. There was melted cheese that was also just as old on the two-burner stove. In short order, it was just disgusting. So I resolved, I don't normally go online to rate things, but I resolved I was going to go online and rate this hotel. I was going to give it a stinker. So I went online, and I remember looking down through the reviews just to make sure that I wasn't totally out of order, and that everyone, if everyone else said this was the best hotel I've ever stayed in, I might have questioned my sanity. But no, it was like Flea Blag Motel. There were horrible reviews. I get to the third one down, and it starts off the person starts off the review with insulting this quote-unquote dot head. And I remember thinking to myself, in somewhat of a smug fashion, well, I'm going to give this owner a bad review, but at least I wouldn't stoop to that level of bigotry. And so I wrote up the hotel, and I left. A couple of weeks later, I had occasion to pull into another motel. I leave my bike outside. I walk inside, open the door into the office, and there's an Indian. And just perceptibly, just very perceptibly, he wouldn't have noticed it, but I knew, and that's what matters. The hairs on my neck start to go up again. He quoted me a rate, he runs my card, it's $10 more. The hairs go up a little bit more. I asked what the rate increase was for, and he said, oh, that's the Virginia tax. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. he leads me to my hotel, and I'm wondering, is it going to be another rat hole? He opens the door. It's a $60 motel, so you're going to get what you pay for. But it's clean. There's no smell. It's exactly as you would expect. So I calm down a little bit. A few minutes later, there's a knock at the door, and I'm still, is this it? Is this where the shoe falls? Is this where the penny drops? And he says, his name is Pradap. I've gotten to know, I've told him a little bit about my story, and I've gotten to know his name at the stage. And he says, are you paying for this trip yourself? And I said, yeah. Thinking to myself, what's that to you? And he says, I would like your card back. I'd like to reimburse you the fee. He takes my card, he reimburses me the fee, he buys me dinner or breakfast the next morning. He didn't understand quite what I was doing, because he then offers to put my bike in his car and take me to my next and he gives me his card, and he says, call me if you need anything. And he tells me in the course of our conversation, he tells me all about his backstory. Now, he didn't know what was going on in my mind, and to be quite honest with you, what was going on in my mind was extremely low level, but it was enough. I knew it, and I knew that these two distinct instances, I had allowed them to be connected by ethnicity, and I was ashamed of that. I really was. And I took Pradap with me on the rest of the journey. I was so moved by this fellow that I wrote him a letter pretty quickly afterwards to let him know how much his behavior had meant to me. And I took him with me down through Virginia, through Tennessee, through Alabama, through Mississippi, all the way to Texas. And I was getting closer and closer to the Mexico border, and I was carrying with me a lot of commentary that I had received since I'd left New Hampshire, but also before, people telling me that it was dangerous. And then as I put miles on me in the journey, I met people who were, whose commentary was a little bit more gratuitous. People telling me that the Mexicans were going to get me and whatnot. And so I'm getting closer and closer to Mexico, and I get to the language is starting to shift, and so it's now becoming Spanish as the first spoken language as I get close to the border. And then one day I can see the wall, and I have those hairs are up on my neck again. I stop and I talk to this border guard. I stop in a gas station and I'm getting some water, and there's this border guard in the station, he's a Hispanic gentleman, an American, U.S. border guard, and I ask him for advice. I tell him what I'm going to do. And has he got any advice? And his advice is, everyone south of the border is a cockroach. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to be careful, but I'm pretty sure everyone south of the border isn't a cockroach. And I went south, over the border, into Reynosa on my bike, and I took that up with me. Thanks.